Hey, how's it going, everybody? If you are remotely interested in being a real estate photographer, this video I'm going to go through the essential equipment and gear that you need to get started. Now, gear is a pretty broad subject. There's pretty much unlimited options. You could go high-end, brand new. You could go used. You could go, mid-tier, something more affordable, but newer. You could use your iPhone. There's just so many different ways that you can go with gear, so it's definitely a lot to unpack. In this video, I'm hoping just to simplify your choices and make it a little bit easier for you to pick your camera setup. So what do you actually need to get started in real estate photography? Really, you can boil it down to three main pieces of equipment. You're gonna have your camera, you're gonna have an ultra wide lens, and you're gonna have a tripod. I would highly recommend having all three of those. You could probably do it without a tripod, but your quality is just gonna be a little bit limited. So those are the three essential pieces of equipment. So let's start with the camera. And like everything in the world, there are expensive options, there are more affordable options, and there's everything in between. So it's going to be really important for you to just understand what your budget is and how much you want to spend getting into real estate photography. But generally speaking, whatever brand, whatever camera you go with, it's going to have its own pros, its own cons, its capabilities, its limitations. That is kind of general for every camera, unless you're shooting with the highest end camera in existence. But even if you're doing that, eventually that will be outdated and replaced by newer and better cameras. So you can be a real estate photographer with a pretty basic setup. You don't need a whole lot. Of course, you could spend as much money as you want, but you can also get by with just a smaller camera setup, or a cheaper camera setup. So here's just like a short list of a few cameras, not all of them, not the entire list of cameras that you can get, but just a couple good ones that will work for real estate photography. So you have your iPhone, which is obviously free. Well, not free, but you already have it. More than likely, you carry it around every day. That's a great option for real estate photography. Going into Sony camera setups, you have the Sony a6400, the a6700, the a7 III, the a7 IV. With Canon, you have the EOS R6, you have the EOS R8. With Nikon, you have the Z5, the Z6, the D850. All of these are great cameras, and all of them would work for real estate photography. It's going to come down to a lot of personal preference. What do you like? Maybe do some research on specific camera brands, and essentially it's what you like. Me personally, I have been shooting on Sony for probably 8 years now, maybe 7 years. I like Sony cameras. It's just what I'm used to. So I use Sony, but that's not to say Sony's better. Sony is just what I'm comfortable with. So that's what I use. Whatever you're comfortable with, whatever camera you have, even if it's not on this list, if you have a camera that's not on here, you can still probably shoot real estate photography. You don't need much. So I would recommend getting a camera with continuous bracketing. Not every camera is going to have that. Most do, but just double check, because if you're shooting HDR, continuous bracketing can save you a lot of time. Next up, your ultra wide lens. This is your second piece of essential equipment. So if you're looking to buy a wide angle and you have a full frame camera, something like a 16-35 is probably going to be ideal. You can get a 2.8 if you want to have a high end lens, or you could get by with a 4.0. That's not a problem at all. If you have a crop sensor, you are going to need like a 10-18 or 10-20. And there are so many lenses out there. Sigma makes really good affordable lenses. You could get whatever wide angle that your camera brand makes. So if you have a Nikon, they have Nikon wide angles. If you have a Sony, they have Sony wide angles. But just make sure that you are getting a wide angle that works for your camera sensor. So having a wide angle is pretty much essential in real estate photography. You also might want a detail zoom lens depending on, what kind of work you want to do. If you want to get into high-end photography and you want to elevate your creativity and capability, you might want a zoom lens. You might want something like a 24-70 in your bag that you can use to grab detail shots. Detail shots are a really good way to stand out in the world of real estate photography. I would recommend having it. Not essential, but you should probably work towards getting a detail lens. If you didn't want to buy an expensive 24-70, you could get a prime lens, maybe something like a 50mm, and that would spice up your listing photo package. So the last piece of gear that is going to be essential for real estate photography is a tripod. I would recommend having a decent tripod. If you get the cheapest tripod that you can find, you're gonna have problems with it. I've just noticed over time the cheap tripods fall apart really quickly. So I would recommend spending a little bit of money on a decent tripod just to make sure it lasts for years and not months. So Benro makes really good tripods. Manfrotto makes really good tripods. You can't really go wrong with either of those two brands. But if you want to do your own research and find another tripod company, just make sure they have good reviews and make sure that they are sturdy. Carbon fiber is also something you might want to consider. You're going to be hauling your camera around all day, every day. So having a lightweight tripod goes a long way. Shaving off a couple pounds really does make a difference. So for tripod mounting, you're going to have essentially two options. You're going to have geared tripod heads and you're going to have ball heads. The geared tripod heads are going to be a lot more precise when it comes to adjusting your frame and your composition and camera leveling. So they cost more for that precision. Ball head tripod mounts are going to be a little bit cheaper and they're not going to be as precise. Geared tripod heads work really good, but you can get by with a ball head. I used the geared tripod head for years, and when that finally broke, I just switched to a ball head, and honestly, like, the ball head is not that bad. There's times where it can be a little annoying getting your vertical lines vertical, but for the most part, you can correct these minor vertical issues in post. So if I had to pick one camera setup from 3 different tiers, the cheapest, your entry level, and then maybe like a high-end setup, this is what I would pick. For my cheapest option, I would use an iPhone. You want to make sure your iPhone has ultra wide. So if you go into your camera and you have that 0.5 times zoom, that's ultra wide. So you're good to go if you have that. And I would also get a tripod, like a Benro tripod, and a iPhone mount for that tripod. The reason I would get a good tripod is essentially just so it lasts longer, and when you do upgrade to a better camera, you already have a good tripod. So that would be like the cheapest setup that you could do. My entry-level pick would be a Sony a6700 with a Sigma 10 to 18 millimeter 2.8 and a Benro or Manfrotto tripod. You can't really go wrong with either one of those. And for something high-end, I would probably go with a Sony a7 IV, 16 to 35, 2.8, and again, a good tripod. So those would be my 3 options. I use Sonys for everything, but that's not to say that these are like the ideal, perfect, optimal real estate photography setups. You could build something very similar like this in the Nikon line, the Canon line, the Fujifilm line. The sky's really your limit, but the reason why I like Sony is because I just know it really well. So I don't have to learn a new camera system, a new camera menu. And I know, like, those setups I can't go wrong with. One last piece of equipment you're going to want to have is this fluffer. This thing is going to save you when it comes to lens dust. You just open up your lens and get this thing in there and puff out any dust particles. That way your sensor stays clean and your shots stay clean. So with all that being said, there is obviously way more gear that you could get. And some of the things aren't mentioned but are kind of mandatory. You got to have batteries, you got to have SD cards. You should probably have a camera bag. But again, there's a lot of gear that you can get, and you can really go down a rabbit hole. I do go down rabbit holes for gear, and I've got a pile of stuff that I don't use in my basement. So anytime you're gonna buy gear, I would just always think about, is this going to make my job easier and faster? And is it gonna make my quality better? And if it checks any of those two boxes, I'll probably buy it. But if it doesn't, then I probably will pass. So all you really need to be a successful real estate photographer is a camera, a tripod, and a wide angle lens. And you could get out there and start making money, today. So don't let perfect stand in the way of good, or whatever that quote is. Just get something that works for you, get something that you have, and you can start getting some practice in. So if you like this video and you wanted to learn more about real estate photography, you can join my school channel. It's linked in the description below. It's a pretty new channel right now, but I'm working on adding all kinds of content to it for real estate photography. So join that if you want. If not, no worries. You can comment on this video if you have a question, and I can hopefully help you out. So thanks for watching, and I will see you on the next one.